Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Naturally, I begin by asking Swami to join us, and we ask for his blessings for this afternoon satsang. You know, sometimes I make jokes, Jay, when you introduced me, I was thinking, who is this guy talking about? It's just, sometimes it's just funny because, God does everything. And sometimes he does nice things through people. And so it's just really nice to be with you all this afternoon. I think some of you know, I know many of you in Region 3, and I think some of you may know that I've spoken there, I think at least 4 times that I know of. Once at a regional conference back in the day, I can't remember exactly when. And then another time at the Atlanta Center. And then at the, I guess it was the pre-world conferences in Orlando in 2010, and then again in 2015. So it's good to be with you again in Region 3. So what I will do today is I'm going to share some experiences because I know my fellow devotees love to hear about their experiences, with Swami. And it's just off the chart. Some of these experiences are just so profound and so wonderful. I get overwhelmed sometimes just thinking about them and recalling them. And I love to share them with people. So anyway, I'll be doing that. And I'm also going to share some poetry because I've spent a lot of time over the years writing poetry. As was said in the introduction, Swami received a book of poetry from me that I had written mostly while living in Kenya, just the year before I went to see him, and a few years earlier. But anyway, I'll start off with one experience that occurred in 1985 when I had my first visit to Prasanthi Nilayam. I had been to India in 1980 and traveled all around. And at that time, I even dreamt that I was looking for Swami, but I was unable to go to Puttaparthi, didn't even know anything about it. I went out to Whitefield from Bangalore, but it was during vacation time. And so I didn't really see anyone. The place was pretty empty, but I just really enjoyed the vibes. And I sat near Krishna's statue there, many, many years ago with that wonderful, beautiful tree there. But anyway, I can't go into all the detail because this was a really momentous visit, my very first visit. As was said, Swami received a book of poetry that I had written and dedicated to him. And that was during my very first darshan with him. He also gave me vibhuti during that darshan. And then a couple of days later, maybe the next day or day after that, he called me in for an interview. And at that time, we were sitting on the sands and all that. And there were, I think the people, probably about 11 or 12 people in the interview. And they all seemed to me to be local people, and I was there alone. So at some point, he was materializing a few things, and then he took me back in the private interview room behind the curtain, for those of you who know that space. And he stood directly in front of me, and he grabbed one hand and held one hand while he took the other hand and placed it on my third chakra, the Manipura chakra, the will center. And he talked about all kinds of things, giving me advice, counsel, saying things that, of course, no one else would even know. And then he said, I'll speak with you tomorrow. And then he told me to leave, go back out to the larger interview room. And of course, I tried to pin him down. Swami, tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow. And I said, Swami, when tomorrow? And he said, just go. So I went back out and sat down. And then the next day, morning darshan, he didn't speak to me. Afternoon darshan, he didn't speak to me. He went back in, and that was the end of that. But I thought, no, he said he would speak to me again tomorrow. So I went and sat on the little wall that used to surround where he stayed in the mandir. And I sat there, and people started chiding me. Why are you sitting there? What are you doing sitting there? And I said, well, Swami's going to speak to me. And I had this silly idea back in those days that he would come out and call me in and take me into his room. But anyway, what ended up happening is I went back to my room, and as soon as I laid down and fell asleep, he came in the dream. 2 dreams, actually. And in one dream, he referred to him having placed his finger on my third chakra and told me to use my will. So I assumed that what was occurring is that he was opening up that chakra for me. And in fact, sometime later, he came in 3 subsequent dreams and did the exact same thing, once from the front and then twice from the back. And once when he was embracing me, we were standing hugging each other in this very lucid, wonderful dream. And he had his fingers arranged along my spine, and he started pressing that area from behind. And I felt the energy flowing straight up my spine. And it was so intense and so wonderful that I just couldn't take it. And I told him, Swami, it's too much. I can't take it. And then the dream ended. Well, of course, after that, I've asked him many times, well, come on back again, Swami. I'm ready for you. I can take it if you want to do that for me again. So anyway, that was an experience that I thought would be worth sharing. Now, I'd like to begin showing you some images that I prepared. I was telling Anu before we started that I'm so used to speaking at length about lots and lots of things with all lengthy lectures and so on, that I really wanted to plan well for this 30-minute session so that I didn't exceed my time too much. So I prepared a sequence and some images. Now, this image, some people, I don't know, I've shared this a couple of times before in talks, and maybe some of you who are listening now have seen this before. But soon after Swami appointed me to set up the U.S. Institute of SSSIO Education here in the U.S., I was working on some institute matter, sitting on the couch in the living room, didn't want to sit at my desk. And so I had what they call the news, it's all crazy. But anyway, I had it on in the background, and I was just, kind of focusing on what I was doing as I was sitting there. And all of a sudden, I looked up and saw this image on my TV screen. Just amazing. I was just taken, of course, as you would be, I'm sure, taken by this. And so the purple buntings and then the red rose in the cosmos. And then if you look, you can see Swami's images a little bit up to the right of the rose there. And then even I've seen him down below and to the right too. So this was such a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I've talked about it and written about it at length, but it's just a wonderful sign of his grace, his blessing, his support, his omnipresence. And it was just quite exciting. He and I have connected on this rose level. And I'll go to the next slide now and show you another rose with a really, really wonderful story. If we can go to the next slide. Yes, now this rose, this red rose, is in a plastic bag, as you can see. In 2013, I had to go on a mission. I was on the education committee of the SSSIO, and had to go to Durban, South Africa, to do some work with the institute there and the schools there. And there is a shrine right outside of Durban that I was taken to. This place, I don't know, maybe some of you who are listening and have heard of this or maybe even visited this shrine, but it has all manner of manifestations, and just all the pictures have honey and vibhuti and amrit and turmeric. This place was just overwhelming. And I wasn't there 30 seconds before I just broke into bhakti tears. And I think the entire time I was there, which was probably about a half an hour, 45 minutes, I was weeping. I just could not stop weeping. Lots of things happened there too in that space of time that I would really like to go into, but I can't. Just a number of things. It was an overwhelming blessing. And so I was presented with this rose as I was leaving by the proprietor there. And it already had a little bit of honey on the rose. And I put it in this plastic bag, packed it in my suitcase, and brought it home. And by the time I got home, a lot more honey had come out of it, and I decided just to take a photo of it. So it was just off the chart. It was a little flat, in my suitcase, but then it opened up and got round again somewhat. And then the honey just kept coming forth. So, I have this thing about Swami and roses. And this was a second instance of a miraculous rose that I can only attribute to his grace. There's another small story. I won't go into it, but when I had my 58th birthday, I was at Prasanthi. I decided to go a few times on my birthday to be with Swami. And on my 58th birthday, a friend of mine, Doris Hampton, who lives in St. Louis, hosted a party for me at lunchtime and invited a number of people, several of whom I didn't even know. But one who came was a nurse named Gloria, who works at the General Hospital and had worked there for several years. And she said in the morning while she was pronaming to Swami as she started her day, she told Swami, I'm invited to some birthday party. I don't know the guy. So just show up with me, Swami, and come and be with me. And as she laid this garland of flowers at his feet, 2 roses jumped off. And so she brought them to the little birthday celebration. And I have another image of those 2 roses, but I won't show it here at this time. So anyway, carrying on, we can go to the next slide now. Some time ago, after I resigned as Institute Director and also as a member of the Education Committee, I decided to pull together some compilations of poems and public talks and other things in my past. And this was one compilation that I put together, Night Dream and Daydream Encounters with Sai and Self, Selected Memoirs of Divine Experiences. And so I put this book together, and what it has in it is a number of dream encounters that I had with Swami. And I refer to them as night dream and daydreams because Swami has taught us that, you know, when you're awake, it's just a daydream. When you're asleep, it's a night dream. It's all a dream. And so I'm very, very mindful of that. And that's why I entitled the book that way. But I also said with Sai and Self, because I've had 3 dreams, which were absolutely amazing, where I actually appeared to myself and gave some instruction as if I were Swami. It was just amazing. So these 3 dreams of myself are also contained in this volume. But anyway, I wanted to share a few things to make it easy on me and make it easy on you, just to share a few things from this text. And I'll begin with an experience around a poem that I wrote for Swami when I was there in 1997. And so I'll just read what I have written. The verse below was written during this visit, 1997. In those days, it was my practice to write only while waiting for him in Sai Kuwan Hall. I had worked on this poem for 3 days in the mornings and afternoons and came to that place where I was not quite sure how it would end. Yet, lo and behold, the final 3 lines were given to me immediately upon awakening on the 4th morning of my efforts. Naturally, I was very happy about it, recorded the words, and joyfully began my day. That afternoon, I was sitting in a front row as Sai came closely by. I never reached for Pad Namaskar during darshan. I believed it should only be done upon his call, and it was not for me to even attempt without his invitation or expressed permission. And yet on this particular afternoon, I watched as 2 or 3 men to my immediate right reached for his feet and were able to touch them. As he drew near and arrived immediately before me, I decided to go for him. Yet little did I know what he had in store. The divine Kavi, poet, literally began to play out a part of the poem that he, through me, had completed that morning. Here's the poem. As he looks into my eyes, the doors of my heart fling open. The petals of that flower quiver with delight. I feel his glow inside me. As he looks into my eyes, that joy from peace ascends. Myself effaced, my cares erased, no time, no thoughts, no words. When he looks into my eyes, he sees the pain I've known. He smiles again, my dearest friend, a flood of love engulfs me. Tell me, O seeker, what air is sweeter? His dance, his grace, his glow. Eye to eye, heart, in me, in he, thou me. just a millisecond before my extended fingers were poised to reach 1 foot. He withdrew it with supernatural speed. His movement was so quick and surreal that I found myself wondering what had just unfolded and why he would not allow me the gesture. It took several seconds to grasp the subtlety of what was unfolding. Caught in the thought of his apparent refusal, my mind began to spin until I was distracted by an incredible golden glow of light that filled his entire head. I was astonished, and all thoughts were suspended as I watched. It was then that I realized that he was acknowledging that this Kavi had offered a poem to the Kavi of Kavis with these words: "Tell me, O seeker, what air is sweeter, his dance, his grace, his glow." Feeling the incredible bliss from the grace he now literally began showering upon me, I started to weep uncontrollably for several minutes. At one point, I replaced my handkerchief that had wiped my tears of gratitude and devotion back into my pocket, yet only to pull it out again as the tsunami wave of bliss returned in full force. This experience was beyond the beyond, and any attempts to fully describe it would be wholly insufficient. This one I liked a lot, as you could imagine. Well, there's another one I will share with you now, another experience with Swami. And here it is. Yeah, this is it. In these days, and I don't know when this was, what year this was, but it was some time ago, sometime after that, 2003. In these days, before I was given veranda seating, I was a bit obsessed about arriving early to sit in the lines before going into Sai Kuwan Hall. Yet on one rare afternoon, I deliberately went to the hall after most had already entered. Rather than try to find a seat near the front, I decided to sit towards the back and some distance away from those who were seated in front of me. I had forgotten my glasses, so could not see Swami very clearly at such a distance. That afternoon, he sat for darshan for at least 1 hour. Like most, I rarely removed my eyes from his form when he was among us, and I tried not to blink. Yet without my glasses, I decided to gaze intently with the eyes of my heart and not rely on whatever my cones and rods may or may not do. After some time, the pillars, the ceiling, the veranda, the people, and all the forms in the hall faded into a cloud-like view, and Sai's form was all that I could see. I delighted and rested in this experience until he called for Arati to signal the end of his time with us. I watched as he slowly walked towards the exit and disappeared from view. As the throng stood up and began to leave, I closed my eyes to absorb the experience. All sound soon faded away, and I went into a trance. The next thing I recall is that I was being beckoned by a Sevadal. I faintly heard, "Sir, sir, sir." I opened my eyes, and he and another Sevadal standing nearby were looking at me with amused smiles on their faces. Then one of the two respectfully said, "Sir, you have to leave now." The hall had completely cleared out, and I was not fully present, yet I followed directions and rose to my feet. In somewhat of a haze, I made my way to my room. Still feeling the effects of the trance experience as I arrived, I immediately sat on the floor in an effort to re-enter that state that I had just experienced. And I almost got there, but not quite. Now I'm going to share quickly one of my verses with you because I'm going to read a few poems if I have the time in just a moment. But here's one that sort of describes this experience here. It's called No Mind. Only when the mind stops moving will the energy ascend. Only by going within will I emerge from the burdensome toil of ephemeral life and feel peace, peace like deep sleep, away, knowing nothing, wanting nothing, without anchor, boat, or water, blissful, beyond feeling, logic, or reason. Okay, that one is that one. Too bad I can't see you. It would be nice to see you smile or do something. I don't know, look away, whatever it would be. Anyway, I'm just looking at myself if I see myself over to the corner here. Anyway, let me just share one other one, which I think is kind of fun. So I was staying in his Punachandra residence at this time and would sometimes come out for darshan from the west side of the hall. One afternoon, I was peering through the small window of my west room at just the right moment and saw him come out. I had been lying on my bed without shirt and pants since it was so very hot. I jumped off the bed, put on my pants, and ran out the room, forgetting to put on my shirt. I noticed and quickly returned, put it on, and was still able to arrive below and to the side of a driveway walkway that separated two west buildings. Several local workers were sitting on the sidewalk facing in his direction. Yet by then I could only see the back of his chair as he made his way toward Sai Kulwan Hall. Somehow the thought came that it would be a short darshan and Sai would return the same way. So I decided to wait in that same location along with the few people who had also remained sitting there. And I was right. He soon returned along the same pathway heading in our direction. I was in his direct view as he looked at us and raised one hand to bless us. As he kept looking, I spontaneously raised both of my hands with open palms above my head, as he himself often did when blessing us. He turned at the end of Punachandra Hall and went inside through one of the raised metal doors. We experienced his grace and were all very, very, very delighted. Okay, just one more of these really quickly. Actually, I won't, because I want to read a couple of poems and I don't want to extend my time. This other one briefly was about Sai and Jesus merging into one. I was in a dream state, and Swami, actually what happened first was that I saw a light image of Jesus about 9 feet tall, just directly above my head. And I looked at him and just looked at him. And then for some reason, I looked to the left at a distance and saw Swami standing there in the dark at the end of what looked like a soccer field. And I looked up at Jesus again. Jesus looked at Swami, and within a millisecond, he merged right into Swami's heart. Talking about a dream. And I immediately awoke, and I was just really flabbergasted by all of that experience, seeing the two of them merge together. I was actually raised a Catholic, and I almost went to seminary to become a priest. And so that was a very wonderful dream. We can go to the next slide, please. I like this one. I just put this together because I thought you might like to see him. And rather than look at me all the time, you can look at Swami. So I put this together for the next 5 minutes or so. What we'll do here, we'll see. One other experience I'll just share, and there's tons and tons of them. I just love to think about them, all these various experiences, and bring him to mind and bring him into my conscious presence. But this one experience, I was on the veranda way up by the wall of the mandir, on this little ledge way behind Ganesha, way up there. And Swami decided to come along. He was in his chair, but he decided to come along that narrow ledge. And as he approached, I just felt that magnetism. It was just, he's on his way. He'll be here in just a few more seconds. And it's so close, actually so close that when he arrived there, he almost ran over my foot with the wheel of the wheelchair. But as he approached, I started leaning in. I just kept leaning in. It was very hard not to. And as he got within a few feet, he said to me telepathically, wait. And I could hear it. I was looking at him. I didn't take my eyes off. His mouth didn't move, anything like that, but it was a telepathic message, wait, loudly spoken, as if he was saying it directly to me. And he was checking my tendency to rush, to try to get to the end before, in due time, I'll get there wherever he wants, whenever he wants. But as he came by, I had this one poem I had written for him, and I had it in a small envelope. And as he came by, I just slid it onto his lap. And that was that. But here's the poem. You in my heart, it is thee that I seek, to have, to hold, to be. I have left you again, my dear smiling friend, in search so afar for me. Why do I wander? Oh, why do I drive from road to lane to snare? To chase a thought or soothe some care, I go here, I go there, yet nowhere. I plan, I scheme, I drift in my dreams, I witness, I marvel, I dawdle. You call me back home, yet still do I roam, away from your love found inside. You in my heart, it is me who's apart, lost but not lost to your presence. I will bring you to me, then me into thee. I am truth, I am home, I come home. That's a wonderful poem I love. I know he inspired that one too. And I wrote it at the same visit where I wrote the other poem that I shared with you earlier about when he looks into my eyes. And so that poem is very precious to me, and the fact that he just received it, I just slid it along his lap, and he received that poem from me as well. So we can go to the next slide, and I will share just a couple of more poems. We're just about out of time, but I'll read 2 or 3 more poems rather quickly and then wrap up. This is one that he received. This was in that 1985 book of poetry that I had dedicated to Swami. And I think it's a lovely poem. It was way beyond me. I mean, some of these things, I look at them afterwards and I wonder who wrote this poem. And of course, we know the answer ultimately, but this one is rather sweet. Unattached and unmoved by apparent change, disappointment, or agitation, may we be in harmony and in peace with all that is and all that arises. The clouds and the seasons, they come and go. Like joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, day and night, heat and cold, fear and doubt, they come and they go. Victory today, defeat tomorrow, delay, return, continue. Unaffected, the wise know the blemish of the surface. Unmoved, they neither come nor go. Unattached, they delight to the waveless depths of no loss, no gain. Full of compassion, they surrender to the perfect pattern within. Here's another. This is about sadhana. Truth arrives in the night from sifting, sculpting, shaping, and shearing the knowledge. In joyful battle and watchful work, in personal peace and loving service, in anticipation and not expectation. Here's one inspired by the Upanishads. The lonely bird who glimpsed himself knows the illusion of flight, yet yearns to take that effortless journey to no north, no south, no east or west, no sight, no flight, no bird. That I like. And this one I wrote at Prasanthi once too. So much love, so much joy, such deep swells of wondrous bliss wash the rim of my capacity and fill my awareness with the emerging wisdom of the friend's ever-presence. Oh, when will I loosen this delightful addiction to the loving to loving the enshrined divine, who walks astride his formless installation inside me, sits behind the screen of my perception, and fools me into believing that thou art not I. And then finally, I'll read this one, and then I'll quote Swami, and we'll peace out on this one. Truth sings the celestial song of no desire, in the harmony of the mysterious middle, a golden whisper of loving feeling, a divine resonation and groundless ascension, an invitation for participation, experienced in the open heart of the disciplined devotee of love. So those are just a few. I thought they might be uplifting a little bit and maybe a bit inspirational. I don't know, I hope so. But even if you're just looking at Swami's pictures and these images that I have, you can be inspired by that. So I want to sort of close out with a quote of Swami's from his 1968 discourse in East Africa. I listened to that thing, I don't know how many times I've listened to that discourse, and I just about memorized the whole discourse. But anyway, here's the part I wanted to share with you. I know the agitations of your heart and its aspirations, but you do not know my heart. I react to the pain that you undergo and to the joy that you feel, for I am in your heart. I am the dweller in the temple of every heart. Do not lose contact and company, for it is only when the lump of coal is in contact with the live ember that it can also become live ember. Cultivate a nearness with me in the heart, and you will be rewarded. And you too will acquire a fraction of the supreme love. This is a great chance. Know that you will all be liberated. Know that you are saved. People hesitate to believe that life can be happy and full of joy, and that the golden age will recur. But let me declare the truth. This divine body has not come in vain. It will achieve the task for which I have come. So finally, I'll leave this with you. Give me your heart and ask for my heart. God is love. Adore love. Live in love. Take to heart the love principle, and we will surely achieve pure bliss. You know, that's his promise. That's one of his central promises. And so we need to take advantage of our great, great blessing and not play small. Let's not play small. Let's go for it. Let's do our duty. Let's follow truth and righteousness. Let's love everyone, serve everyone, not let anything get in the way. Keep the agitations back. Don't get entangled. And we'll be where we hope to be. And he will bless us and make sure that happens. Okay,